Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sleuthing Eye-Opening Tales of the Past. I'm your host, Marie LaBrosse, and you're listening to us from WKDW 97.5 FM, Real Community Radio. I'm coming out of Northport, Florida, and I'm here today, where you're here today, listening from the Bishop West Real Estate Tower, or you're watching us on Facebook Live or also on YouTube Live. So thank you and welcome back. Today's show is a continuation. This is show number 13. And it's with a co-host I bring on with me. She's I think that she's an expert. She may not think that she's an expert, but she lived here since 1972 in the city of Northport and has been instrumental in a lot of things. She's had her hands in a lot of things and on a lot of committees and knows most of the people instrumental in the growth of the city of Northport personally. So no more further ado is needed for my co-host for this segment of Sleuthing Eye-Opening Tales of the Past, show number 13 on the history of the city of Northport. Hey, Joan.
How you doing?
Good. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, absolutely. I'm learning so much. I knew a lot, but I'm learning so much more. And just to premise everybody out there to know, I live in Charlotte County, but I've lived here for 34 years. And I've been involved in the city of Northport, different things over the years, and I've watched their growth. Not that I was instrumental in their growth. I'm more involved now than anything. But Joan, do you know where we're starting off?
Around 2012.
2012. But because of 9/11, which was 20 years ago this year, it's one of those things that really changed the way that our communities and the world did things. Do you remember the days that you could walk on the plane and not have to go through the security like we had?
Oh, yeah.
Or they had air marshals on the plane. They didn't, just randomly. And you were never looking across around and, you'd ask a neighbor, hey, would you watch my stuff while I run in the bathroom or something like that? And now, it's a little bit different. So what changes have you seen? And where were you on 9/11?
In Northport. We were here, and I can remember our son called us up, and he said, in a few, because he was overwhelmed by what was happening. So it was like, oh, shit. Yeah. You see what I saw on TV? And just as he was on the phone, the second plane hit. And you just go, and we just sat there together, all of us thinking, oh, my gosh, how can this be? How can this be?
Absolutely. Well, where I was, in case anybody really cares, is we were raising our granddaughter, and I'm trying to think of what grade she was in, maybe second or third. My oldest daughter and I were in the classroom reading to kids. We were working on tutoring kids and that.
Like our president then, George Bush, almost.
Right. Actually, we were doing what he was doing, except we were in a different classroom. Not per se that we were reading to the whole classroom and we were doing different students, but he was up in Sarasota, and it was at the same time we were doing this, pretty much the same thing, except on an individual basis. And the teacher comes in and whispers to me and my daughter that we needed to leave the room and go into the other room. They had a TV, up on the wall. And we went in there and we're just looking and can't believe this. And I go,
yeah,
under attack. And then the second plane hit. And I go, and just like your son, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Like
I
Oh,
mean, you just shouted it out because it was just so horrific.
and the
Oh,
really sad part is some of those pilots were trained right in Venice
mm-hmm,
how to fly,
absolutely.
and they didn't, you know, you don't think of that when you're at that time. We weren't thinking about, them training a terrorist or that. It just wasn't on our radar. Now today, because of the way the media is and what you see on TV and um, on streaming, you see all that type of material out there, and you get taught everything. In fact, my opinion, and because it's my show, I can say my opinion. My opinion is a lot of the things that we see that is happening in this world is being learned. I don't know if they would have had all the kids or the adults would have had the same wherewithal to really do some of these shootings and different ways.
Oh yeah, we're training them. Yep,
Yeah,
it's
and
scary. We teach them to do copycat
and
crimes.
and it's sad because when you and I were growing up, they couldn't even be shown in the same bed, and they had to have one.
Right.
If they were in a same bed, one of them had to have one foot on the floor. I think that's the way that.
Oh hey, I Love Lucy, twin beds, and you didn't say the word pregnant.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was crazy. Not that that wasn't too far because it wasn't really real. However, we don't, truthfully, you can't even turn on anything anymore for little young kids, even, to be in the same room if you're around in that and to use swear words. That's just a second nature on anything.
Oh, I know. It is amazing. I used to say you can't watch almost any TV show, almost a family show even, that within 15 minutes doesn't make things that are just not acceptable. I remember the movie 9 to 5 where drug scene it's funny. We're all laughing because they're making you laugh and it's not right. But going back to 9/11, I'll tell you what, I think really we need to put more emphasis on that last plane that did not go down and the amazing ability, cell phones, we got to give them a plus there. If it wasn't for those people on board that plane in Pennsylvania hearing and knowing what possibly their flight was going to be, that flight was supposed to turn around. And I believe the target, from everything that I've been reading about lately and hearing about, was meant not for the White House, okay, but for the Capitol. And there were a lot of legislators in that Capitol at the time. And if the Capitol had gone down too, and if a lot of our members of our Congress had gone down on that day, that would have been a completely different situation than we had, although it was awful. It was absolutely awful. We've all read some books, Roll On, and books about the Pentagon and books about what happened in that day. And reading about it and all this stuff. And there's just no way of saying, just before you got on, I was texting back to somebody about the Tunnels to Towers 5K that they put on all the time to honor those that have died and make money for the support. I'm very saddened that, and I know Northport is, and the people who work on it that are Remember the Fallen 5K has been canceled. Because that is to honor the families of the victims, and that the proceeds from that go to that. But because of COVID and because of Hurricane Irma, basically the last 3 out of the last 4 Remember the Fallen 5Ks have been canceled. And sadly, our service to Remember 9/11 has been canceled because of COVID. And that's very sad, because we need them. We need them for ourselves, for our own mental health. We need them because we need the families of today and the younger people to understand what happened. If you don't study the past, you're doomed to live it again. And we really need to do that. Northport cares. The fact that we're not having the ceremonies this year, don't think Northport doesn't care. Don't think the people in our fire department and police department aren't discouraged by the fact because of COVID, we can't handle these and we can't hold them. And, we can't say enough. I did not know any of the victims of 9/11, but I did a lot of reading about them. And of course, we've been there to Ground Zero and all. And even now, 20 years later, you go down to Ground Zero and your feelings are just absolutely coming out of your whole body because of how you feel and inside and the remembrance of what happened. So God bless everyone involved. We are so sad, and please, let's never have this again.
No, absolutely not. One of the things too, my daughter, she lived in New York at that time. I think she live in New York? Her girlfriend did. Her one friend, that she has a penthouse there, and they were watching people jumping from the tower because they could see the tower from their place, and you're helpless. What do you do when you see that? And there's so many people. In fact, the show that I'm going to air on Friday, this show will air the next Friday, but it's a survivor of the towers that I interviewed before, and it's a repeat one that I aired a couple of years ago that I was lucky enough to actually interview this man. And when you look at how much it touched people's lives, and I had friends that were working for the Rosie O'Donnell show that time, and the tower hit while they were on air. I mean, the tower got hit, and they got, of course, or they were getting ready. Yeah, I think they were getting ready to air, and everybody had to, get out of there. And I had a couple friends that lived right down by the towers, and just crazy. But just to all the victims that we lost, and also to their families, we're really sorry about having had this happen, and that it touched all of us personally, but you most of all. Joan, I suppose we better get going on to the city of Northport
Okay.
history. And we're going to start with 2012, but if you're just tuning in, you're listening to WKDW 97.5 FM, Real Community Radio out of the city of Northport. And I'm your host, Marie LaBrosse, and Joan Morgan is my co-host for this. And she knows a lot about the history. She's been living in the city since 1972. And just for our audience, the city didn't become the city of Northport till 1959. And Joan has been there since 72. And when she moved into town, there were how many people?
About 1,200.
Yeah, about 1,200. And we just want to put that in perspective because there's a close to 80,000 now. And the prediction is that
very close. We're going to be 100,000 very soon.
And 250,000 they're predicting within the next 5 to 10 years. And
absolutely. I mean, you can see their houses are going up now.
Yeah, well, I saw Cape Coral's over 200,000. And when we moved here, it was nothing, at that time. So you see the growth in the area. So 2012, what's going on?
Okay, let me just say a couple more things because we just had Labor Day, okay? And yes. We got to, celebrate that. But also, when I think of Labor Day, let's talk about Volunteer Day. And before we go on, because so much of this, if we took out of the whole series of Northport history, those things that were done by volunteers, this would be a very small list, okay? Because of all the things that people have done. WKDW is a very good example. You're all volunteers. You're all doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Kiwanis is on the front page today, and we can combine that with 9/11. They just gave a banner and all to Firehouse 83, and they're always making things for them and celebrating them and trying to honor them. And what a wonderful group. So if it wasn't for our volunteers, I mean, Northport would not be where we are today. Okay. We are going to 2012, and we're going to start with the Scout House, which is at 5845 Greenwood Avenue, or right next to Dallas White Field. Okay, and it is now named for Bud and Wanda Corte. Bud and Wanda Corte have been they could write all this history because they have been such an essential part of the history of Northport and have been there on so many things to help out the Boys and Girls Club, to help out so many community things. They've done makeovers on houses to help. One time, Bud was the head of the building department in the city of Northport. He built a kind of like our own restaurant for Northport Little League on wheels, so we could have a place to sell our hamburgers, hot dogs, or whatever we could, instead of just putting everything for a refreshment stand on a picnic bench. So Bill and Wanda Corte virtually rebuilt the Scout House and everything to it. So to name it for them was a no-brainer. And that happened. And we salute him for being our supervisor of building and everything else that he did. And Wanda's been a Citizen of the Year for all her volunteer work and all. So again, when you see that building and you see the sign out in front, think a moment of the people that it's honoring and what they did, selfless service to Northport. And we thank him, as we thank so many that did selfless service to Northport. Another thing that was started at Atwater Park was, and this something is very near and dear to my heart, we wanted a place to remember those that died too young. I'd have to say it hasn't been emphasized or maybe known as well as we wanted it to, but there is a future, but at least it's there. It's by the Splash Park over at Atwater Park on the side, and it reads with the pavers and that, "In the arms for a while, in our hearts forever." And you can buy a tribute brick to some child who has been lost too soon. We basically, the concept behind this, when we really started talking about it, we wanted a place to honor and to show our love for those children, because sadly we lost some from cancer, from car accidents, from congenital heart failure, from a lot of things, unfortunately. And we wanted to remember them. And here was the criteria. Number one, we wanted it to be a happy place. Okay. And we wanted people to be able to come and celebrate and be happy. So anyway, this was established there. There are some bricks that have been bought by some people and very important ones in our town. But there is room for more. I hope we never have any other child that needs to be, someone needs to buy a brick for. But on the other hand, when you go to that Splash Park or Atwater Park, please look at it and remember what's there behind it. We wanted bushes and everything else that would bring butterflies into the area, a milk thistle and things like that kind of like stimulate the butterflies to come. Yes.
How do I buy a brick for there?
Through the tribute, through the tribute community. All you have to do is call over to the recreation department at Morgan Center or at City Hall. Okay. And they will give you all the details, because they're all down there, and the prices and everything else, they're very reasonable, and they're there forever. And, as I say, there's only a few that have been used so far, and there's sadly room for a lot more, which I hope we never have. But we want you to go over there and to honor those kids whose lives are celebrated there. And while you're at the Splash Park with kids, laughter and all this stuff, kind of think about them. So anyway, to me, that was very important. That was something that it really did a lot of thinking about and really, meditation about. So anyway, that's that. Okay, on to 2014. And we already talked about this a little bit. Remember, the Fallen race started. It was organized by the fire department. Rich Yarnell has been the lead person in that since the beginning. And basically, it's because of 9/11. It was a 5K race, and then a 5K and 10K. It was going to go back to just a 5K because they had so many more in the 5K than the 10K that the 10K really wasn't worth it. And it is to honor and to help families from 9/11. So it all fits in with what we just talked about. All right. As we said, sadly, 3 out of the last 4 have been canceled. 2017 Hurricane Irma And then, unfortunately, because of the COVID, the last 2 years have been canceled. But this will come back. And the fire department, and I know Rich Yarnell and a lot of the people in the fire department, City Hall, and everything else, truly, their hearts and soul are into this. So I'll look for it in the future. All right. In May of 2014, Thomas Ranch sold a lot of homes in that, invested $100 million. That became the West Villages. The West Villages, now Welland Park. Let me tell you something. This future is going to be disputed. I mean, there's a lawsuit because some of this wants to become unincorporated and not part of Northport. And this is going to go on, this lawsuit and fighting that. But also look at what's happening up there. You can't go north on 41 and not see the construction. Just the other day, they had the groundbreaking for what they're going to create. They're going to create their own city area. And we haven't had a downtown city area. That's one thing we've talked about building in Northport for a long time also. So anyway, the number of houses that are going to be going up there, schools will be there soon. Of course, they want a hospital up there. And the fight is going to go on, whether this stays part of Northport or this becomes its own entity. I hope it stays part of Northport because it is going to be a beautiful area. They're taking a lot of their nods from Lakewood Ranch and Disney Celebration, So, and they've got a lot of people there that have invested a lot of time. So that's going to be extremely important. And that's going to be truly the future with Northport. And in that area lies our new Braves stadium. So that's very important too. Okay, Northport's first fire marshal, Michael Franz, retires from active duty. He was a big part. He was a great guy. If you knew him, he really cared, and an important part of Northport. Imagine School built its own gym. Okay, this can expand their activities, and it was very important because this is kind of like the first kind of like their real buildings, not a rental from buildings that were up to put your school in, but this was their building. Okay, Gene Bronze was one of the ones that inspired the next item, which is in 2016, and that's the Garden of the Five Senses Park. And that's become more of a Garden of the Five Senses Park, and we'll talk about the playground area in a little bit that was put there, because now we have more fruit trees in that, so we can put taste in there too. And that was, I mean, talk about, you have an idea, okay? You work hard enough, and somehow it comes to tuition. And we can also put in there for Northport, achieve anything. You can make it yours. You can do something. And she certainly wanted to do this. And that's located at 4299 Pan Am Boulevard. Across from that, which is now an open field, was our Little League field, was our Bob Glasser Little League field. And before we had Atwater Park, before we had the Little League fields at Bill Butler Park, which is right where the Morgan Center and the Aquatic Center are in front of there, Bill Butler Park. Before those baseball fields were there, okay, then our Little League field was at Dallas White Park, originally at LaBrosse, and then Dallas White Park was added onto it. And then we got this land, which a lot of people on Pan Am didn't want us to be on. Okay, that was supposed to be kind of a city green area that turned into a baseball field that I can't say every resident of that area was happy with. It was way too small. And I know our car window was smashed once by a ball there. I mean, it was kind of like you couldn't help it because the parking was small. And so, if someone hit a ball over the fence, chances are somebody's car might have gotten in the way sometimes. But anyway, for those of us who were in Little League at the time, let me tell you something. That was a very important field. And the memories we have there with Mike Metrione, Carlos Perez, and of course, the Glassers, and of course, the Dailies, we'll never forget. Okay. what else do we have here down our list? We have down here in 2016, we have a resident who sadly is no longer with us, but this was an important one, and that was Gary Stouch. And he kind of like headed, he was one of those guys that was willing to work, but really didn't want his name on top of everything. And he headed kind of like an organization to have boat owners be able to have their boats in their driveways and that. And this was very important to a lot of them. And a lot of our commissioners, I can remember Jacqueline Moore and some of them being at the committee meetings and all. I was very proud of them for standing up for it. Because you might say, oh, you know, is that necessary and all this stuff? But you got to remember, down in Punta Gorda with your HOAs and things like that, a lot of people weren't allowed to have boats in their driveways and that. So a lot of people actually wanted to live in Northport because that was considered okay to do. All right. And that was important because you have a boat. All right. And you need to put it someplace, and to store it at a marina got rather expensive. So when they were going to kind of start, you can't have a boat in your driveway. This rattled the feathers of many, many citizens. So for Gary Stouch, who sadly has passed away from pancreatic cancer and was another guy that we can't celebrate enough. He was always there to help with anyone who needed help. He helped Holly's Hope. He helped our 5K race when we started at Lamarck School. And he helped any place anybody asked him to help. He was always at every opening, every ribbon cutting, and everything. He was always there. But sadly, pancreatic cancer took him. But the city, I will say, I'm very glad that the city honored him before he passed with a key to the city. And that was a really nice thing to do and very appreciated by his wife, Susan, who's still is still helping organization and trying to carry on his legacy. Okay, some other things that are happening during this time. In 2017, the Fleet Maintenance Facility was started at the Public Works Department complex in the northeast corner of Price and Chamberlain. That complex has become bigger. There's a lot of trees and everything around and fencing around it, so you can drive by there and not realize all that's there. But let me tell you something. Back in the days before we had when we had the totes instead of the bins that we have now that are picked up by Public Works and all, you went there to get that tote for your recycles and things like that. So I think more people were there at that time than now when we have these big bins that are picked up and has become part of the fabric of Northport. But back in the day before we had those, we were all there. And in that complex, we've had a lot of things go on with Public Works and all. And that's another organization that we can't celebrate enough because they really do a lot for Northport. You don't realize how lucky we are to have people that work for Public Works and cares. And this is the great part of Northport. We have a lot of service people on Public Works, on sanitation and all this kind of stuff, and certainly in Parks and Rec that care. Okay, they do their job, but they do it because they care about Northport and they care about our community. And we need to celebrate them because not everybody has a nice person that you can talk to if you need a little help here and there, and they do, and that's good. And in that complex, and this is not on the list, but should be, Jane Harry, who was one of our engineers at the time. Certainly, if you were around Northport about 6 years ago, you saw Jane Harry out on Sumter and all every single day, waving by the Public Works trucks and working with them and all this stuff. And sadly, she passed away from cancer. And there is a plaque and honor her for her, a tree and a monument there for her. So these are important things that are so overlooked. The next thing on our list is really hard to talk about. The Holly's Hope organization, which started after the death of our daughter. It's impossible to talk about. It's impossible to handle. It's impossible to believe. And it's kind of like this whole program that we've done with WKDW when I was talking about the past years and everything, the past decades, my brain was reliving those and the happiness that surrounded Northport and surrounded our personal lives, and how we could spend our time working towards positive achievements. And now we're working in an entirely different direction towards trying to save lives against anxiety, depression, suicide. If you knew our daughter, she was the very last person in this world that could commit suicide. But only when your brain fails you, if you have an injury to your brain, there's many reasons for suicide, but this is the one that took us, and we did not realize that the logic part of her brain was ruined possibly by a fall that hit her head, and she just overlooked it. We all did. And then she was so proud and so part of the community. Heron Creek Middle School students, thousands of them, they knew her, they honor her. All she did for the community. And what can I say? Now we are devoted. We have to go on. Ed and I did not start Holly's Hope. Ed and I did not organize it and did not demand the city to have this or anything else. The city of Northport started it. Our commission started it. Vanessa Carasone was the head of it. Jacqueline Moore really worked on it. So many. Christine Robinson started, basically got us the teen court. So this was a very much a community thing. And since no one could handle her death, they decided, not Ed and I. We did not decide this. We did not ask this. In fact, my words were, I don't even know if we could handle this name on it. But that's why it became Holly's Hope. And basically, at the time that this was started, you got to understand that actually Peter Lear, who was then city manager, and Vanessa Carasone, they had something in common with Holly. They all graduated from the class of 1988 at Venice High School. Holly was the most outstanding senior celebrated by the school. It was the first year we had students from Northport go to Lemon Bay or go to Venice High School. And she put on a spring homecoming that she told the faculty about the week before, and she just put it all on and had it all. That's the kind of thing she could do. I mean, she could do anything. And the fact is that she was the person that did everything. She did 10 times more than Ed and I ever thought of doing. She was amazing. She could do 20,000 things at a time. And therefore, when her brain was failing her, she couldn't let down, and she didn't want anyone to know. And we thought she could work this out herself. Premenopausal, God knows we didn't know what was going on with her all of a sudden. And she didn't either. So that's why we have to speak out. We have studied all the 144 football players that have died of a very similar thing. And we know others who didn't commit suicide but had strokes. And it was because of brain injuries. We had one very recently. This guy had a fall. And, they're more worried about his broken arm than they were about the hit to the head. And unfortunately, a suicide happened a very short time ago. It takes a while. It doesn't happen the next day. But gradually what happens is your brain, the logic part of your brain fails you. And let's face it, folks, we do what our brain tells us to do. Our hands don't handle our body. Our legs don't. Our brain does. And we need to really, we have to work on this. We have had suicides more than you believe in Northport. And I'll tell you some very sad ways. In the trailer parks, in the nursing homes, and all. Some of our senior citizens accidentally, or maybe on purpose, take more medication than they're supposed to. And these aren't really even recognized. Some spouses of senior citizens have taken their medication because they're lonely. And then we've had other situations where bullying. Sadly, very recently, middle school person bullying. We've had them in the high schools, in Northport, a number of them, first responders, middle schoolers. Statistics are telling us before COVID that 1/5 of the kids in the classroom are suffering from depression and anxiety. 1/5. That's before COVID. We don't know the figures right now. I know of students that are in middle school are on Prozac. On Prozac. You know, Del Shannon, that was the cause for his suicide and others. And you know, they're on Prozac. And that's not good. But what are we going to do? Right now, we can't even get into the schools. We do not have the statistics. But we do have the evidence of what's happening because all of society, I don't care who you are in society, you got taken down because of COVID. Your family got hurt. Your family suffered anxiety because of it. So our numbers are even greater.
I want to remind people, in case anybody does think about suicide, you can call the 1-800 number, which is 1-800-273-8255. And if you're interested in Holly's Hope, you can go to their Facebook page, facebook.com, Holly's Hope MP, which is Northport, or give Joan Morgan a call, 941-875-8996. A lot of times it's hard to reach out for help, especially today. The mental health, in fact, when I was driving around, I was back up in Minnesota, and I come from a relatively small town. In fact, I think there's only about 5,000 people still living there. They had a place now for mental health on the main street that you could go to for mental health. And in the town next to us that I raised my children at, they had a similar place. And I'm going, they're finally recognizing that mental health is one of the problems that leads to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, other types of indications of there's some things going on. So people self-medicate. And it's, it's hard to admit that you have issues going on.
Yeah, it really is. And we have several things that we've done. I'm very, very, very proud of everyone. Corey Hutchinson is now our president of it. And I so thank him for being that right now and working with us. Elaine Allen Emmerich, who has a lot to do anyway, and she's our secretary and so involved. Lori File, who does DeFi, and that is a drug-free youth. I mean, she's so involved. And her husband, Tony, who has spoken out because so many first responders do not speak out. The code of silence. You don't tell anybody. You self-medicate, and you go down with the horrors of what you've seen.
Well, and Joan, one of the things with first responders, it wasn't acceptable before.
Right.
To admit that you had a problem. Some people lost jobs over that.
Absolutely. If you were a first responder, and this includes our area, I'm sure it includes all the areas. If you're a new time first responder, okay, and you say you have anxiety or depression, you're fired. I mean, that's just the way it is. We've had first responders, brand new ones in Northport, just actually starting the job, commit suicide. We have had it in Northport. This is true stories, unfortunately. Okay. Tony File, we really have to reach out to. He's been a firefighter and he's been in the papers and he is saying this. So I'm not saying something I can't. And he has reached out and he has said what it is. And he has said how he almost went down to it. But thank God he had help. And now because he was a firefighter in Charlotte County for so long, and he had a reputation and he had a following, guess what? They're listening to him. The one thing I can say that we are encouraged by, the old timers have this code of silence, don't say anything, suck it up. But on the other hand, the young ones, we are hoping will be more willing to talk, listen, and really, work out the issues, because what a horrible job. And Holly's Hope, let me tell you a couple of things that we've done, a couple of things where we're working on. One of the first things we achieved, and basically we really have to give a lot of thanks to everyone in our commission, and certainly Christine Robinson and Vanessa and Jacqueline Moore and so many others, is the teen court. Teen court is now in the city of Northport. They use it for counseling sessions at the city of Northport when other people aren't around. Before COVID, our commission chambers is used as the court, 14 court. Basically what it is, it's a first-time offenders, youth through the schools, through community or whatever, instead of going through the juvenile delinquency program and having a record, okay, they can go to teen court, first-time offenders, and they deal with things like bullying, fights, underage drinking, petty theft, shoplifting, all sorts of things. It's not just little things, it's big things. But anyway, here's the deal, and here's why it works. And it's a nationwide program. Katie Self was a big one starting it in our area. And right now we really got to thank Heather Todd, who has taken over from Katie Self, and also Devon Heps and some others that are working on it and doing a phenomenal job. But sadly, because of COVID, that's going to be Zoom and all this kind of stuff too. But hopefully it'll be back soon. But basically, kids do not have a record from the first offense. It's free and clear. They can go into the military. They can go on with life. They can become president of the United States. And they cannot go back and find a record because there isn't one. So they've got one shot at it. And let me tell you something. They have proven throughout the United States, and actually this is worldwide. It's not just even in the United States. It's worldwide, okay? Those who have gone to teen court, the percentage of them going out to do further and worse crimes is way, 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 way less than those who have gone through the juvenile delinquency program and all this kind of stuff and have a record, okay? And here's why. Because kids run the court. The only one that's an active person while the court's going on is our judge, which actually is Christine Robinson for the most part. She's one who volunteers her time. God bless her. But basically what happens is the kids are the prosecution, the defense, they're the jury, they're the bailiffs, all right? And they run it. And basically what kids think, first of all, their parents are called in. They're called into counseling, so they're part of it. The kids are faced with their own peers. So they have to look in the eye, people their own age who have done things, and they're solving it. And basically the kid that comes in for this hearing, they're seeing that, guess what? There really is teeth in the law. I mean, they have to serve community hours. They have to do things. They can give them real penalties. It's not just saying, oh, I'm sorry you did this, don't do it again. Okay, there are real penalties imposed. All right, but it's just not a record. And part of their sentence is they have to become part of future juries so they can see why the decisions are made and what was wrong with their behaviors. And it's working, and we are so thankful that it's now in Northport. Another thing that we've done, and we've got to thank Amy Vogel for all her help in this, and everyone else, of course, Holly's Hope, is we now have a Survivors of Suicide group. And that group meets on the second Monday of every month, and it's now down at the Southwest Florida Counseling Center, which is 1777 Tamiami Trail in Port Charlotte. And this meets on the second Monday of every month. And Amy volunteers her time. Again, this word volunteer has to be in everything, because everything in Holly's Hope and everything else we do is all volunteer. And it's really helpful because those who have been involved in suicide, sadly enough, the rest of the world doesn't understand what this does to the soul. It's different. I'm not saying that if you lose somebody from cancer or long illness or whatever, or a horrific accident, and that isn't as horrible as it can be, but there's something totally different about suicide. And unfortunately, if you haven't been grasped by this, you really don't totally understand it. But remember, this is next Monday. Next Monday is our next meeting of this, and it's the second Monday of every month. And if you call me, I can give you more information about it. And we're very thankful that we have this program. We've also worked on programs for veterans, almost Sunrise. We've put on 3 programs for them. And like the first responders, let me tell you something, to try to get a veteran out and say, I have a problem, very, very hard to do. Okay, so we reach out to them. Holly's Hope worked on programs through the school, More Than Sad, and some other programs that we've put on. One of our members, Elizabeth Tracy, and her husband at the time, he has now passed, wrote a play called Choices and Chances, and what they did to make it relevant to the world. And we've had 3 programs of this put on right in City Hall in the chambers. All right. And basically what they do, they film things in our area. They filmed it from Lemon Bay High School, Port Charlotte High School, Charlotte High School. They showed the Peace River Bridge. They staged an accident scene in the Promenade Shopping Center. So it was students around our area that were part of this. And they showed teenage bullying. They showed guilt from surviving an accident when you've caused the accident, survivor's guilt. They showed suicidal thoughts. They showed underage drinking and partying. You know, they showed a lot of aspects, but they used kids in our area and showed places in our area so the people could truly understand it does pertain to them. Sadly, COVID, so we can't show it every place and everything else, but that movie is there. And Elizabeth Tracy and the rest of us from Holly's Hope intend to send it out to other places once we can. Safe Talk is another program that we put on. Janet Cirillo with our social services. We've had a number of Safe Talk sessions in that building, also over in Englewood, and Amy Vogel, again, volunteered and put on all these programs. And we will put on more in the future once COVID is over with and we can do. But basically, what is it saying? It's teaching people how to talk to and maybe listen better to those who have needs, to make sure that you get in their face if they say something and say, what did you mean by that? Are you really thinking of hurting yourself? And reaching out for help for them and not just saying, oh, we'll let this go. This is just a phase. Oh, they'll get over it. They're just saying that. So it's really giving people tools of how to reach out. So those are some of the things we've done. Right now, we're concentrating on 2 things. One is we're going to be, as we've done before, and here's a copy of it. All right, the suicide walk down at Lashley Park. Okay, and this is going to be this year, October 23rd. Okay, and you can go to Suicide Prevention and find out more about this walk. And people are invited, and Holly's Hope will be part of this, and a lot of them. And this is a yearly, and it's at Lashley Park, and it's on October 23rd. And you can go to American Federation of Suicide Prevention, AFSP.org at Charlotte County and get information about this. And it's for those who are relatives, friends, survivors of those who have committed suicide. It's for people who have contemplated it, have thought about it, are worried about somebody who has said things that they feel could be suicidal, and to give you tools to work with them. Okay, another thing that we're working with right now and we need to work with is our first responders. Unfortunately, more statistics that no one wants to know, but it's true. More first responders have died of suicide than have died on duty. Can you imagine what they see? The ambulance drivers, the first responders, the fire, the police. They go into some places that are just awful. They see the deaths of young children. They see the decapitation of young children. They've seen everything. And guess what, folks? You can't do that forever for it not getting to you. And a lot of them, as I say, especially the older ones, have taken the code of silence, suck it in, and their families don't even understand. Their families don't understand because they really can't talk to them about it. It really gets very hard. So Holly's Hope right now is concentrating and really working on first responders. And we are so thankful here again, the community. Michael Saunders, through Shannon and Mitch Messenger and some others have given us funds. We've gotten grants. Michael Saunders, for every house and everything they sell, part of it is putting into the foundation that they started, and they help this and other community events, and we're so grateful for them. Just a week ago, our Chamber of Commerce, God bless Northport Chamber of Commerce, under the leadership 2021, chose us and some others. They chose Hope in Northport under Steve Leclerc, another phenomenal group and everything. And they gave us funds that they had over, which we're very grateful for. We're trying to get the answer. We're trying to put on things. One of the programs we put on through Holly's Hope was at the Axe House. And what we did, because first responders, if you said, oh gosh, first responders, would you all come to our meeting and we're going to sit here and talk about your poor lives? They're not going to come. Okay. So we wanted to put on fun activities for them to give them some pleasant time with their families together. And they love the Axe House. So we put on a program there, and we're very thankful to the Axe House for donating a lot to us. And we are going to put on others. Are we out of time already?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, I know. We got through up to 2016, and I know that it's so critical, though, with so much with mental health, Joan, right now, especially with so many people being, in their homes and that. And I wanted to remind people, because this has come up. My husband had went out to get some mail last night, and it was late, and he ran across our neighbor across the street, and he doesn't have family here. His brother had died and that. And I'm not the best neighbor, because I'm busy all the time. And I said to my husband, we need to start inviting him to come on over to the house, because when you're older and he's over 80, it's isolation. And one of the things that I'm the chair for Giving Tuesday, Southwest Florida, for the area, which is November 30th, I would like to challenge people this year to find a shut-in, a senior, someplace out there, to reach out, send them a note, send them a letter. If you have a neighbor next door, or even in a nursing home, if you know somebody that's at a nursing home. When I was visiting my mom right now, because of COVID, she's in a nursing home now. There were so many people that didn't have anybody that ever came and saw them, ever.
And I know. It's true. It's absolutely true.
So sad. And if you put yourself in their shoes, how lonely that must be for them. Even though they're dealing with nurses and different people, those are caregivers. Those are people that just come and have a conversation with you. So, and I know that even a little card in the mail to somebody can change their world. Just one act of kindness, something like that. It's the little to you, but it might mean the world to somebody else. So we have to end now. You've been listening to WKDW 97.5 FM, Rural Community Radio, out of Northport, Florida. We're coming from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower. And my guest today was Joan Morgan. And she's also my co-host when we're doing this series. It was series number 13. We got from 2012 all the way through 2016, and then we talked about 9/11 and also about Holly's Hope and suicide prevention. From my heart to all of you out there, I am Marie LaBrosse, your host. Please take the time to be kind, even to yourself. The world would be a much better place. Just one act of kindness can change somebody's world. Have a great day, and see you again next week on Sleuthing Eye-Opening Tales of the Past. Bye-bye.